Good evening and welcome to World Talks, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. Georgia's political world has been shaken by the dramatic fall of former Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili. Garibashvili now faces charges of large-scale money laundering after investigators reportedly found more than $6 million in cash at his home. To discuss the current situation in Georgia, I am joined here this evening by Grigol Julukhidze, Professor of International Relations, Caucasus University. Good evening, sir. Delighted to have you with us. Thank you for joining.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So Irakli Garibashvili was long seen as Bidzina Ivanishvili's trusted lieutenant. So does this recent downfall and now money laundering charges signal a real split within Ivanishvili's orbit?
I think that Bidzina Ivanishvili's positions and the strength of the Georgian dream are right now growing and increasing. What does it mean? It means that right now the ruling team in Georgia has a total comfort to be the key and the only political player, especially amid the absence of opposition. And right now I would call this process the changing of the skin, because Mr. Ivanishvili, together with his most loyal party affiliates, is consolidating power, and this power consolidation is started within the Georgian Dream Party, first of all. I would say that this is a very dangerous signal, not because of the fact that the former members of the Georgian government were involved in money laundering, but first of all because of the fact that decreasing interest towards Georgia from the West because of many objective reasons, geopolitical ones, first of all. The ruling team is becoming a stronger and stronger player, and unfortunately this shift in its foreign and domestic policy is associated to the rapprochement policy with Russia. And of course Moscow is very effectively benefiting from this shift.
Right. So some observers basically are saying that Ivanishvili has lost confidence in parts of his old guard. How shall we outsiders understand all of this? Could you perhaps explain the current power dynamic in Georgia?
Well, I don't agree with this assumption, because I don't think that Mr. Ivanishvili is not confident. He is more confident than ever before. The problem is the fact that he does not like to be deceived, and this money laundering process and involvement of high officials of the former Georgian government once again means that these people were acting against the interests of Bidzina Ivanishvili, who wants to be the only and the main decision maker in terms of ruling of Georgia. And because of the vast majority of such actions represent the direct opposition to Bidzina Ivanishvili's political creed and political, I would say, aspiration to become the only dominant within the internal political games, the elimination of these former politicians and high officials serves two main reasons. First of all, to show to other members and even the most loyal supporters of Bidzina Ivanishvili and his affiliates that no one is under the total protection and there are no security guarantees. And this is another catastrophic signal to the whole population of Georgia that the authoritarian way of ruling, the authoritarian methods will let's say, hit everybody without exceptions, and that's only a matter of time. And from this point of view, no one could imagine that Mr. Garibashvili could be under charges one day. But once the real ruler of the country changes his moods, then the political persecution and also legal persecution starts.
Right. So I wanted to ask you, Ivanishvili is sort of formally empowered, right, as Georgian Dream's honorary chairman, right? So how much sort of day-to-day political control does he have compared with Prime Minister?
Well, he's the main, as I have mentioned, he's the main ruler of Georgia who controls the most important political decisions. And the government members even openly say that the most important aspects of daily politics are agreed with Mr. Ivanishvili. And he has informal power. He controls the most important political processes, whether it is arrangement of certain political let's say representatives who will be responsible for the security direction, who will be responsible for foreign policy. He's an informal ruler, and this is one of the main problems of Georgia right now. And also we have to understand that this process ultimately leads to the full consolidation of power, because as Mr. Ivanishvili and the Georgian Dream become stronger, the level of confidence is growing, especially amid the total absence of political opposition. And at the same time, the highest representatives of the Georgian government have to meet only one important requirement: to be totally loyal to Ivanishvili's interests, which sometimes are against the national interests, like foreign policy orientation. Because one day Mr. Ivanishvili understood that for him it would be much more useful to affiliate his political future and let's say businesses with Russia rather than with the West. And the Georgian government started to shift its foreign policy orientation slowly and quite effectively. And right now we see the bilateral relations between Washington and Tbilisi, between Tbilisi and Brussels, at the lowest level of the history of independent Georgia.
But many in the country see that there is a problem, right? For instance, Zaza Tavadze from the For Georgia party said about the case of Mr. Garibashvili and the millions of dollars in question that it is only the tip of the iceberg. And he also argued that the prosecution was meant to create an illusion of an anti-corruption drive, that it is to make Georgian Dream look uncompromising against corruption, whereas in fact, of course, they do not care. So what do you make of these statements?
Well, as I have already mentioned, the main task of this operation is not to portray Georgian Dream as the fighter against corruption. Yes, one of motives mentioned by the ruling team press speaker was the fight against corruption. But first of all, this is a personal revenge of the top leadership, and first of all, Mr. Ivanishvili, against those unloyal members of the Georgian government who tried to steal money from Ivanishvili and tried to, let's say, benefit from these relationships, these loyal relationships that those two had. And of course, the Georgian Dream is trying to portray all this process as a fight against corruption and illegal actions, but the prime motive is different. This is more private and more, I would say, personal issues rather than the extended version of the fighting of corruption.
But the case of Garibashvili is sort of not an isolated one. I recently came across an article in the New York Times that I found it quite mind-boggling. Perhaps we could take a quick look at an excerpt here.
In late May, a fugitive entrepreneur with control over a Bitcoin fortune walked into the lobby of an Abu Dhabi hotel for a routine meeting with a lawyer. Minutes later, he was surrounded by a group of security operatives, whisked away in a convoy of 2 cars, and eventually blindfolded and bundled onto a secret private flight to his native Georgia. There, he was imprisoned and asked to transfer his Bitcoin to the Caucasus nation's mercurial billionaire master. To reinforce the message, a goon was sent into his cell to beat him unconscious. More than a decade before, the two had been on the same side. The young man, George Bachiashvili, had worked for the billionaire, Ivanishvili, helping manage his businesses and investments.
So, to what extent does this account mirror the situation in Georgia? Because, for outsiders, it's just so difficult to comprehend that such things could be going on in the country.
So former powerful clans and these clans involve Mr. Garibashvili, Mr. Parshaladze, Mr. Liluashvili right now are fought by the ruling team in order to weaken them, because from this point of view, by Mr. Ivanishvili, they are perceived as personal rivals who benefited illegally from these, let's say, loyal attitudes that Mr. Ivanishvili had towards them. This is one dimension to weaken the formerly powerful clans. Another issue, of course, we have already mentioned, to portray the Georgian dream as an unconditional supporter of fight against corruption. And also, of course, we have to understand the political dimension of this decision. It is a warning message to other members of the Georgian dream and other high-ranked politicians in the Georgian political elite, especially ruling team, that Mr. Ivanishvili requires a total obedience from each of them.
And of course, people are seeing this, yet we're seeing that the government is introducing ever harsher punishments for people who are protesting. So what can be done to reverse this, or at least to put a stop to this?
Right now, nothing, because the Georgian dream has won this round, but it does not necessarily mean that within 2 or 3 years we'll have the same situation. A lot of things depend on external factors, what's going to happen between Ukraine and Russia, what will be the outcomes of this war for the South Caucasus, how the West will react. But as for the reactions of the West, we have to understand that all these reactions are delayed already. And the political team, which is known as the ruling team of Georgia, Georgian Dream, is benefiting from this reality and has total and complete comfort to do whatever they want without any serious consequences. Why? Because of the fact there is no, let's say, tangible political opposition that would translate the social protest in the change. That's the main problem of Georgia right now.
This is very worrisome. And if Georgia drifts further away from the rule of law, from the EU track, what are the implications for security, for investment within the wider Southern Caucasus?
Yeah, we see the deepening relations between Georgia and Russia. We see a growing economic and migration leverage from Moscow. We see the increased investments from China and United Arab Emirates. And due to the fact that Georgia is located in a quite unfavorable geopolitical area, this creates preconditions quite unfavorable for the Western political intervention. Apart from that, we cannot ignore the fact that the war between Ukraine and Russia, the Middle East crisis, worsening relationships between Washington and Brussels are far more actual and far more important thing than the crisis of Georgia. And the dynamics that we see and the prediction for the near future is not quite optimistic for Georgia, because this process will go on. We see no hope in terms of shifting again the geopolitical orientation of Georgia. We see a constant attempt from the ruling team to sabotage bilateral relations with the United States, strategic relations with the European Union, and meanwhile Russia is subtly and secretly growing its political influence, pressure, economic leverage, and the direct presence of Russians, because physically right now we have in Georgia more than 70,000 Russians who are creating own community, who are registering companies. And I remind you that more than 35,000 companies, private companies, have been registered over the last 3 years. More than 16,000 units of real estate were purchased by the citizens of the Russian Federation. And I'm not speaking about the political dimension of this set of actions, because these Russians bring with them not only economic influence, but also political ones. They're able to finance pro-Russian moods with cash, with different means to disseminate pro-Kremlin narratives. And frankly speaking, we see already these effects, because the pro-Russian moods right now in Georgia, especially in the regions, have become, let's say, more attractive for Georgians, for some Georgians. Yes, marginal ones, but still, that's only beginning. And meanwhile, we see the worsening dynamics between Tbilisi and Brussels. Most likely, this tendency will be kept for the next months and years. And this is the situation in which it is very, very difficult to predict what's going to happen next. But the next set of actions won't be quite favorable for the Western future of Georgia.
Grigol Julukhidze, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for shedding more light on this difficult situation. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World. World News coming right up.